What's up, guys? Welcome to Fitter Food Radio. This is episode 170. I like the sound of that. Don't you?
Why?
170, and it sounds big. We got there. We got there in the end.
Got to do a celebration when we get to 200.
It's going to take us about 20 years.
I know.
And it's me, of course, Matty Boy Whitmore, with the one and only Keris Marsden.
How do?
Oh, no, Wagwan.
Well, I don't know what to say when you say that.
Well, it's just what's going on? How are you?
Just doing a podcast with you.
You are, aren't
All
you?
good.
All good.
All
I like
good.
it. So here we are, guys. 170. We're going to talk about a very, 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 very important subject today.
We are indeed.
Men's health.
Yeah. Something that I think needs more discussion. That's why we're actually going to do one on friendship, weren't we?
Well,
I read an article on it.
This was the kind of the catalyst, if you will, for this episode, because we were talking about, well,
My Matt's got no friends.
I often say, like, I haven't really got any friends. It's hard being me. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I suppose you could argue that I choose not to have many friends. Like my circle is very small, if you will. But it kind of went on to...
Literally, because you do prefer hanging around with, like, most of our friends' kids.
Yeah.
You like the trampolines, the football.
Great fun.
Yeah.
But like
Crazy goal.
We were saying, like, you know, when you move to a new area and the older you get and stuff like that, we've mentioned this before, like it's almost harder to make friends as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, we bump into people, we get chatting with them on dog walks and stuff like that. But it never really kind of like materializes into a friendship as such, does it? And then you had read an article, hadn't you?
I've got it with me because it had so many good facts. So we thought we would do an episode just talking about this article that was in the Times at the weekend.
Well, actually, can I just quickly say before we do get onto that, like, you know, we are going to talk about men's health, but I think what's really important is that, just like we've always said before, you know, health is so multifaceted. Like, there's so much to consider when we think of health. And if you look at, I mean, things are changing now for sure, but I think back to when the earlier days of when I was reading like Men's Health magazine and things like that, men's health was very much like lift weights, 5 foods that boost testosterone. You know, last longer in bed. All of these kind of things, you know what I mean? But
what more could you want out of life?
Sounds great. My testosterone's through the roof, got massive biceps, and I'm lasting ages. Happy days. I am a god. But I think now, like, there is much more focus on mental health. Yeah, you know what I mean? And like, you know, and we're just going to, I think, cover the full shebang today. And I suppose, you know, I, as a man myself, am in a good position to give my take on, I suppose, some of the battles that I've had from a mental health perspective, and, you know, like we said, like making friends and that kind of stuff. And
well, the reason that you're absolutely right. So men's health is about more than just looking at things like everyone associates, you know, straight away goes to testosterone, for example, or looking at your fitness and your physique. And that's kind of, we are going to touch upon those subjects today and talk about them. But the article itself, I've often discussed with you, like, social health and how important it is, and how both of us, especially over the years running a business, is a lot easier to kind of just focus on working, and it does consume all of your energy and headspace, and you don't really want to socialize at the end of all of that. And over time, we've noticed ourselves getting more and more insular and kind of looking forward to people cancelling plans, like not really making an effort to make plans. Our friends book up, like, especially friends with kids, they'll book up like months and months in advance. And so when we do find we've got a free weekend and we're like, come back to work, let's go and do something, and everyone's booked up. So we're like, oh, okay, which is fair play, because, you know what I mean? Like,
you'd be like, what are you doing on this weekend, the 12th?
They're like 2023.
And they're like, oh no, I am available on the 12th. But yeah, 2023.
Yeah.
Soz.
And so there isn't much spontaneity. And then when, like you said, we've moved around, so there isn't many people that we know in our locality. That's changed slightly. But the article that I read kind of triggered a discussion between me and you, because it's about friendships and loneliness, but it being much of a bigger problem for men. And it was written by a male journalist. It was really interesting because it's something that, you know, over time, you've said that statement to me, like, you know, I don't have many friends. And you actually do, like, you know, over the years, there isn't many people that you haven't worked and hung out with that you've ended up becoming friends with. But what you don't do is actually kind of nurture those friendships necessarily. And actually, this is quite a male thing that you don't make much of an effort to, especially with some of them, their kind of routine is about, some of them work together, your mates, don't they? And they go to the pub every, Thursday, Friday after work. You're not part of that circle, and you're not that interested in going to the pub because you're up really early at 6 o'clock to train, in the morning. So it's kind of once in a while, but that's not your regular thing. And you certainly wouldn't get blotto like all of them not do as well.
No.
So over time, you've been like, I ain't going. And then you've kind of tried to get into other kind of groups, but it is really hard. And if you don't click with people quite quickly as an adult, you're not seeing them on a regular basis. You made a choice to maybe go to test out a football team, for example. And if you didn't hit it off with a few people instantly and didn't like the coach or anything, which you've done that as well, haven't you? Kind of experiment with joining a football team, but you were like, no, I'm not sure.
I joined the football team, but I was like the oldest one there by far.
And they were all going out boozing afterwards again.
Oh, mate, should have seen me on Saturday night. All these little lads. I might have pulled about 20 birds, you know what I mean?
You could go and join them.
Good. I'll show you boys how it's really done.
Yeah.
Watch a master at work.
I'll stay with Hamish and watch back-to-back Motherland quite happily eating chocolate. Don't have to watch. I can't even believe, can I just say, by the way, that you made me watch Aquaman this week, saying it was an amazing film. And it's like 2.5 hours. I mean, I quite like a Marvel film or whatnot. Is it Marvel? I don't even know.
How rude.
I know. Is it? Right. Well, I don't even know. Sometimes they're good, but honestly, that was just...
I thought you'd appreciate it just for how often he had his top off.
I've got that at home. I don't need that on screen.
Oh, babes.
Anyway, right, we'll read this article. But 2.5 hours of that cack, honestly.
Why are we talking about?
Because I'm saying you go out on the pull. That's absolutely fine by me because I'm going to stay in and watch some decent TV with Hamish.
That's hilarious.
I was thinking like Saturday night, I'm going to let him have the choice of film. 2.5 hours though. Anyway, right, okay. So first of all, the question in the article, which was about that we have an epidemic of loneliness. This could apply to women as well. In fact, everything we're talking about could apply to women
absolutely.
Today as well. But we have at the moment...
But us men need some attention too.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to do today. Give you some attention. So there's an epidemic of loneliness that's going on at the moment. The UK is in a grip of an epidemic of loneliness. So I'll just repeat that. Okay. 20% of adults under 35 have no or one friend. How many friends do you think you have, Matt?
Don't know. I definitely have more than one.
Am I counting as one?
Yeah.
One more than me.
Yeah.
Anyway, the number of people who report feeling lonely has risen in the past year from 5% to 7.2%, which is an extra 1.1 million people in the UK. And what they've said is that men, this is more in America where they've actually started asking men about, friendships, are suffering from a friendship recession. Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. Friendship recession. The American Enterprise Institute, which found that the number of men with at least half a dozen close friends had halved from 55% to 27%. As far as single men are concerned, 20%, 1 in 5, had no friends at all. So we thought this was quite interesting. And so I should just say that there's the author of this article, or was interviewed in this article, is Billy Baker, and he's written a book called We Need to Hang Out, which you just wished he was called Billy.
What?
His name is Billy Baker, and he's written a book called We Need to Hang Out about loneliness.
Yeah.
Like, well, how could he not give himself an author name of Billy No Mates? Like,
I'd imagine Billy No Mates.
You wouldn't buy the book though, would you?
But it's quite a British term.
It's a British thing.
I can't imagine. I don't know.
You look majorly unimpressed when I said that. Anyway, he's talking about... He went off and he did loads of research. Again, this is mainly in America, about men kind of reporting loneliness and why. And a few of the things that he discovered are what we've kind of touched upon already, which is that men tend to make friends when they're participating in some kind of activity together. So, for example, you're at school with your mates, sports teams, university mates, work colleagues, and then if you do something in your spare time, so it could be kind of some gym class or something like that. And then if that falls off, they don't continue with the friendship. So they don't nurture it, like we just said.
Yeah.
They don't ring each other, they don't hook up on a regular basis, and then therefore it becomes it's inconvenient in a way or you've got to go out of your way to kind of meet that person, and men just don't do it. And if you look around at us and even our friendship groups, I'm not even great with this kind of stuff, but I'm way better than you, I'd say.
Oh yeah.
In terms of just texting a friend, reaching out, saying let's have a FaceTime or a Zoom when I walk the dog and things like that, whereas you tend to ring like your closest friends on their birthdays and things like that. So it is annual, literally. And the other pattern that is common is that women tend to organize the social scene. And it might be also around the children as well, as we mentioned before. So you are happy to just go along with that. So whatever I say, I've organized this weekend, we're meeting up with so-and-so for a roast, or we're going to my parents, we're going to go and see your mum. Even like I take over sometimes plans with your mum.
Yes, we are.
You just go along with it. So you almost have a false sense of having a social life that I've kind of organized for you, but they are your friends as well. Many of them,
of course.
Because we have mutual friends, of course. But what that kind of also is, it's a bit like you're a personal trainer for someone and you're doing the press ups for them. Do you see what I mean? And therefore you're not going out of your comfort zone and like ringing people and hooking up. And the reason this is really important is because there's so much more research now just talking about inflammation in your immune system needing social connections. So social isolation is associated with actually lots of different chronic inflammatory conditions and immune dysregulation, but also a rise in inflammation, which would have a really negative effect on your health and possibly cause or contribute or drive mental health, anxiety, kind of, even like depressive disorders, or just feelings of, we could just call it feeling low, which is something that I would say is becoming much more apparent in my male client base. So over time, I've noticed kind of trends in that men are kind of, booking in for nutritional therapy, sometimes because they're overweight, sometimes because they're looking at wanting to perform better at sport. But in the background, they'll often comment on the fact that they suffer from some kind of mood related issues. And it's often why they're training and trying to lose a bit of weight to see if it will help. And it often does if it's done in the right way. So again, I think this is very common with men, that they just will fall into someone else organizing their social life for them. No,
I think you're absolutely right. And I think also, what did you say the age was?
It was 35, where they were talking about men under the age of 35 and under have one or no friends.
Yeah. So I was thinking like...
I think it's older would be more of a case of that. But,
I was going to say like there's probably another study that's done something like that. But I was also going to say like, I think as you do get a little bit older into your 30s, and by that point, a lot of people have married or have got a long-term partner or have got children. Because I've had this. I mean, I don't have kids, but...
You know of.
That I know of, no. Or a wife, yeah.
All right.
Or fiance.
All right.
Same thing.
Yeah.
But I've had moments, haven't I, where I've openly said to you, like I've almost felt a bit regretful in a way of the decisions that I've made in the past, in terms of like that have kind of decided the direction of my life. And not drastically, but more so, I often think, I never went to university. Did I miss out on developing like a lot of friendships there? Because I often speak to people that have been to uni. It's like, oh yeah, uni mate, like, and they still catch up with them now type thing. And I don't know, like even from like a business perspective, I often think about like, I wish I'd applied myself a little bit more at sport. Maybe I could have got further there. Even now, sometimes I think, why didn't I get into CrossFit sooner? Because I could have been really good at it. That, whereas like now I feel like that ship's sailed type thing. I think what I'm saying is I think you get to an age where I think you just start almost like overanalyzing your past a little bit and maybe reflecting a little bit too much, and not necessarily in a positive way.
So you're having like more and more regrets. And I think just to go back to the friendship thing, I'm going to finish a few points on that in a second. But I think what you're essentially saying is the problem is with age is you could easily fall into a habit where you've either got no friendship kind of or friendships that you actually really feel are true, because you can fall into hanging out with people just for the sake of it because you don't want to be on your own. It's like a friendships of convenience, can't you? Or you've got partners or your kids kind of organizing these friendships for you, in which case you're showing up, but is it true quality time for you? Do you know what I mean? Because it might be someone that I get on better with and I like hanging out with more, and maybe you don't necessarily get on with them or the partner, so you're there, but it's not, again, something that's really floating your boat. But I think also as you age, you're then, I see this a lot in guys that I know, you start to question your kind of enjoyment of life. And if you don't really enjoy what you're doing at the weekends and your spare time, free time, if you haven't got these quality relationships in your life, you might love your partner, but it's not always enough. And we've mentioned that before.
Yeah.
And then you don't have hobbies and things that you're excited about doing outside of work. Then your life becomes work and jobs.
Yeah.
It becomes the domestics. It becomes the financial responsibilities. Now, if that's going to crap as well, then life gets pretty shitty because there's no release. There's nothing to kind of escape all of this stuff. And I think it all begins to accumulate and has this massive impact on mental and emotional health. And this is when we can start to say, oh, I think I've got depression. But I don't think it is always a case of that. We can't measure this. This is the thing, you know, in terms of, yes, we could look at brain chemicals and imbalances. But actually, if you ask an individual, well, if you don't like your job, you're not really that impressed with your social life, you don't feel like you've got any friends, you know, the hobbies that you want to do, maybe you don't have time for, the money for, or you don't have the access to, or you don't do them frequently enough, then it's no wonder that the feedback from your body or your brain or whatever is just like feeling a bit low, a bit mid all the time. And I think as you get older, you know, I've talked to you before about my clients say I'm doing the death math, like how long have I been here for, how long have I got left? And that triggers depression in them because they're like, I'm not sure if I've ever got like, you know, how many decades, but I ain't enjoying the ride. And I'm not sure that it's going to get any better. I can only see it getting worse. So you begin to kind of catastrophize a little bit, you know, around that. And I think it's very easy to reflect back and blame yourself and think that you made these mistakes, you're here in this position. But you do start to have a bit of a crisis maybe of identity as well. Because what were you here for? What legacy are you leaving? And I think this is, you know, for men in their 30s, 40s, 50s, this is when I see it become kind of like a really difficult, I suppose a difficult process to go through. But unlike women who I think are better at verbalizing some of this stuff, men don't. And I'm good. So I'm good. I mean, I'm lucky in that you wear, loads of my friends have always said this, God, Matt wears his heart on his sleeve. Like you do verbalize quite a lot. And you pull faces like you're doing now. So I can kind of read you. And I know when you're kind of sat there thinking about like steak for dinner or you're something bigger, like your eyes give a lot away. But a lot of men don't. No,
for sure. Like I'm definitely more of an open book than most men, but I've always been like that because I suppose because I'm just
Why is that, do you think?
Do you know what? Like, I know it sounds like, I'm sure many can relate to this, but when I was younger, and you know when like you've played up and, you know, like, your mum's had a go at you or something like that. And my mum would always kind of say like, never go to bed on bad terms.
Oh,
you know, like always, whatever it was, you know, just do your apologies, make it right before you go to bed. Because heaven forbid, if anything happens, you don't want this to be the last thing. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, the last interaction.
So like, I suppose like in a way, it's almost like that planted this seed of kind of always talk, always be open, be honest. And, you know, just let your feelings be known type thing.
Yeah. And I suppose also explain why. You're very good at explaining. We'll have fights, but then we'll explain why we came from such a bad place at that time. Because if you were going to not go to bed on an argument, you've got to say why you were. Yeah, well, why were you a dick?
Yeah, well, here's why I was a dick. But yes, I think that's definitely part of it, and I think it's just in my DNA as well. Like I've never been one to keep things to myself, you know, like do
you think it's also because you didn't have your dad around, so you've got your nan and granddad, and so you were watching interactions between people, I suppose, and then you've got your mum, so more of a female energy. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
So
yeah.
You know, you've got the
I've definitely got, you know, probably had more like female influence in my growing up than male, and you know, always, you know, still am obviously very close to my mum, and you know, I've always been incredibly close to my nan and granddad, but you know, of course my granddad isn't here anymore. But so I'd say that probably plays a role as well. But in a way, like I know, like even like, you know, like previous girlfriends have always said, you know, like I always know where I stand with you, because like you always, you know, you don't
internalize.
So it's almost like if I say something's okay, like they know it's okay. Because if I didn't think something was okay, I wasn't happy about something, I'd say it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I don't kind of like keep that in and pretend, if you know what I mean.
But I think this is a big issue on the subject of men's health, because when I speak to friends about this, they often talk about their partners not talking about problems, and they have to be almost kind of like, they have to beat it out of them. They know something's wrong.
Yeah.
Everyone picks up, you know, intuitive people are good at picking up when something's wrong with someone else. And often it comes out some other way, like you're just a bit ratty about, I don't know, just unloading the shopping, or do you know what I mean? Like the laptop breaks and you just have an overreaction to that. And it's a sign that there's something else kind of going on inside. And so you can pick up on that with someone, but often it's quite hard trying to get them. And I think that this comes from, and I hope this changes in future, an expectation that men shouldn't express emotion, vulnerability, weakness, cry, say that they feel low, depressed, unhappy. And we were talking about, the whole of society is shifting slightly. We've mentioned this before on the podcast. And so there isn't the same kind of roles for men and women now. There isn't the same, that used to be a bit more kind of, I suppose the physicality of a lot of roles were designated towards men because it involved, like strength and labor and things like that. And then anything that was a little bit more maybe kind of creative or typically feminine, looking after caring was female based. And that's all started to switch and move around. But I think it's also caused some people to feel a bit lost, and some, many opportunities have changed for men and women, and some are disappearing. And if that's all that you're good at, and it's disappearing because of advancing technology, I think again you get that crisis of identity, confidence. What will I do going forward? And I think the world is also becoming a bit more confusing for certain generations, that if it's becoming more tech based and online and flashy, if you don't feel that you can be part of that, in any way, it's not part of your, maybe it's just not something that you want to do. Again, you're being left behind, and I think segregated slightly away from things.
No, for sure.
It's a really interesting time.
And I think statistics show that, most suicides are in men.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we can't ignore that. There's something going on, and what it is exactly, I don't know. I do think it's not verbalizing. I think it's definitely a part of it, 100%. And I think as men, and we all do it, and I've spoken about this before, I think we put certain pressures on ourselves, especially when you're in a relationship. And like I've said before, I've always, not that I expect Kerry to just stay at home and sit on her arse all day, but I've always said that I want you to feel like you're taken care of. I want you to feel secure and looked after. You know what I mean? And even though you'll say, but I don't need looking after, it's just how I feel. Like I want to kind of protect you, if you know what I mean. It's that kind of feeling, because it's like, this is my family. I want my family to be okay. And I put this pressure on myself. So when I feel like it's not okay, I take responsibility, almost subconsciously. But equally, I'm open with you. I'll be like, look, we might need to cut back on this, we might have to cut back on that because our expenses this month are a little bit more because we have this work done or whatever it might be. Yeah. And
interesting, that can become a cause. I think we've observed this in partners where they're not having that dialogue and talking about money. And one is
because financial stress is a big cause of suicide. Is financial
But
worry.
I would say disease, full stop. Because I see, some of our friends that we know as partners, we'll see, I'll walk, for example, with one, maybe the woman or whatever, and she's like, I brought this and did this, I'm spending money on this, and I'll be like, oh wow, gosh, shit, and I know how expensive. So many of my friends are kind of nutritionists or health enthusiasts, and they're buying expensive leggings and gym membership and stuff like that, and then you'll walk with the partner who's going, God, we're in dire straits financially, the other half, and I'm like, well, then why are you letting them spend all this money?
But this is the thing, but
they feel they have to allow them to have every happiness.
It's almost like but if I tell them to spend less, I'm not doing my duty by providing, type thing. And I had a friend of mine who was in a real state about it, and kind of said to me, I'm literally working myself to the bone to kind of to pay for everything every month, and literally just it comes in and it all goes, and then I go again, and then I've got all these bills to pay and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, but have you actually spoken to your wife about this? No, I can't. I couldn't possibly.
It's it's failure as well, though, isn't it?
It's almost it's almost like, to him, he's admitting failure. He's like, I've let you down. I've failed you. And to a degree, I get it. I totally get it, because I don't like saying to you, oh, Keris, can you, I don't know, trying to think of something that, I'm quite lucky. You're not an extravagant person, not not
food and supplements.
Food, yeah. I'm like, can we just rein the subs in a bit this month? Like, less pills. Please.
Less nut butter.
Nut butter, blimey. No, that is an expense. Cool, blimey.
What I don't understand is, like, for my birthday, you've never brought me nut butter. Like, you could just buy me. It's lovely that you brought me some.
100. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get you, like, I'm going to buy straight from the source. Buy you like 100 kilos worth.
Buy me a peanut farm.
What if I bought you a nut butter machine?
No, because I don't want to make it myself.
Why not? You just put them in the top and it comes out the bottom as a nut butter.
Cooking.
True say.
But you could just buy me a Pip and Nut farm or something.
I'll buy you shares in Pip and Nut.
Yeah.
If they ever go public. How about that?
That's perfect. But that's what I'm saying about it. As a present, you could get me something that.
I'll just write this down for next year. Sure. But yeah, like, I don't like to have to say that to you, but I'm like, but I have to have that conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like, but like I said, I do get it to a degree. And again, this kind of goes back to that thing of opening up a little bit more, which isn't easy all the time because it can be applied to absolutely anything. But I just think the more you internalize things, the bigger they become. And I think that's a very quick way for small things to become big things. And when you take a lot of small things and you put them together, they can take over. They can become very big, very intimidating.
When I do, like a client's timeline, and you're kind of building up to like when they fell ill, and it could be any type of different condition, like eczema, maybe cancer and things like that. And I go back through the client and I say, like, can you tell me, a little bit of like what happened before you were, had your diagnosis? And sometimes you can actually hear the stress story just snowball, like along, and it will be like, oh, well, my wife wanted this house renovation, so we got out a big loan and we've started this big build, and then I got made redundant, and then she was pregnant, and then you're just like,
it's the wife's fault.
So it's nobody's fault. But the man has become like the sole responsible person, like the person responsible for resolving this situation. And sometimes it has been, in one of my cases, cancer diagnosis. So you can see just how much that overwhelm can generate, changes your biochemistry, generates inflammation, and there's a predisposition. I'm not saying that I'll ever be able to prove that cause, but it is out there that stress causes cancer, heart disease, it's change your blood pressure, and like it will drive inflammation.
We can't deny that stress, like,
it's a killer, isn't it?
Of course it is, because it's not like it's just stress in itself. It's like when you're stressed, it leads to excess drinking, comfort eating,
indirect effect,
less sleep. Maybe as a knock-on effect to that, you exercise, like, you know what I mean?
Maybe you exercise too much to try to out-train the stress.
Exactly.
So there's loads of ways that it affects.
The list goes on.
Yeah, definitely. But I was also going to say, we talked this morning about, as well as this kind of going on in the background, and I think hopefully more support will come from a kind of mental, emotional element, aspect from it. And I love that you're seeing more celebrities, sports professionals talk about this. I've seen more men cry on TV and kind of get really open about their battles. And I think that really helps to normalize it.
I cry quite a lot.
You do cry quite a lot. You cry them more than me, I think, sometimes.
I'm a sensitive soul.
Yeah.
But I'm that guy, I'm the first one to cry when we're watching something.
Yeah, you are. No, we both cry at the same time, I would say. But you'll cry a lot just kind of reminiscing and talking about things that are, really personal to you, and you'll get upset. And you've always cried if you're upset about a situation. But it's interesting because I think people look at you on social media and see you swinging your kettlebells around, got half decent physique. And I think they make this assumption and judgment about you.
Charming.
They make an assumption and judgment about you that everything's fine and perfect. And I know, and you've been very open.
He's hard as nails.
You've been over on this podcast that it's not like that at all. And we've had some genuine, real battles with running businesses and confidence crisis online. And should we even be doing this anymore? Are we put out for this? And it's definitely not been smooth running. We have many regrets about things that we've done with our business and decisions that we've made as well. And I think it's quite important that people hopefully get both sides of the story, listening to when we talk on our lives and blogs and things like that, and don't just see, the show reel, the good bits, which is when you train, it looks like life's good and why, that guy wants for nothing. But what's also really interesting is when I watch other men interact with you, when we go and meet new people, go into new environments, I see them judge you straight away. And I see this kind of almost like a peacocking effect, like behavior that starts out. And it's really interesting. I've had it occasionally as a female, sometimes in classes and stuff. Someone next to you in a gym class or yoga class is like, oh, I'm going to be better than you type thing. That almost kind of instantly doesn't want to like you because of how you look, and maybe because you look strong and someone to kind of compete against. But I think what's kind of interesting with you is I see this desire, we've seen it on even courses that we've gone on, for people to belittle you and ridicule you like straight away. And it's really interesting. It's almost, I don't want to say that it comes from jealousy, but it comes from jealousy. Like it really does. It's almost like, well, you must rate yourself. You look like that. You must be, you must be taken down a peg or two. And I think that's such a shame in terms of male to male interaction, when deep down inside you're like, does anyone want to be my friend? Like literally that's all that's coming out is that.
Would you like a sweet?
That's the only energy that you're giving out. But it's so interesting that what gets thrown at you first, which I think makes it harder for men to make friends, is what I was trying to say. I think there's a little bit of like trying to kind of, I don't know. And there's not so much kind of like, do you want to go for a coffee? I mean, I'm bad at that. Like I find that intimidating in case someone says no, to say, do you want to go for a coffee, or do you want to come for dinner? Like, what if they go, no, you weirdo? But I think it's a lot harder for men because there isn't even that sometimes the initial friendliness, despite that two of you could get on like a house on fire.
Yeah. I mean, it is a tough one. And I mean, like, I think when you are younger or when you are, I mean, it is a little bit different now because, I mean, I must admit, like to rewind a little bit, like when I think of when I was playing rugby, it was great because I was playing a sport that I loved. There was the massive social element to it as well, after training, after games. And genuinely, I was very, very lucky. Like, especially my rugby league days, like I loved every single one of them boys. Do you know what I mean? It was a genuine, like there wasn't one player that I didn't get on with, and it was always a great vibe when we were together. But saying that, I was never as sociable as some of the other guys. I'd be the one to say like no to more social things than some of the others. But then I've always enjoyed my own company as well. So that's why when I said earlier, like I haven't got many friends, it's not necessarily a bad thing because to a degree I quite like it that way because I'm quite happy on my Todd.
When we've talked about it, like you've reinforced that over the years, and I know that like when I was working weekends lecturing, you'd be like, I'm quite happy, I'm going to I'll do a bit of work and I'm going to plan an evening, like chilling and watching films and stuff. And I know, and you were genuine about that. Like your job is also interactive. So you're talking to clients and you're kind of online and stuff. So you're doing a lot of interaction in your day. And I think it's quite natural if you have that when your downtime is maybe just you. But when I read this article, it kind of reminded me of the fact that it's not always that healthy, because it also means that most of the time you're either working, you're in your own thoughts, or you've got me rabbiting in your ear. And so for other men out there, I think if you're not kind of having that proactive social life, it's going to be the same for you, in that you're in work mode, or you're kind of listening to your own chattering mind, or you've got, your partner, which, may be lovely and perfect. I know I am those things.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely, yes.
But it's not healthy.
No.
In that if I'm having a bad day and like taking out on you, or my stress becomes your stress, and I think you need that break from me, from work, and from your own chattering mind. Everybody does. And I definitely noticed kind of hooking up with. So one thing that this article said was about men trying to actually set up, like try and find a group of mates that are interested in the same thing. This is what the author of the book did. And he went off and basically said, right, Wednesday night.
I did have something else I was getting onto.
Let me finish my velvet hook and then you can tell me.
I hadn't actually finished what I was saying, but carry on.
I just want to finish the friendship bit.
All right.
And then he was saying that he'd started this kind of like informal group, asking people just around him in his network that he had encountered. But a lot of them, he said it was way out of his comfort zone. It was almost weird to say, do you want to come on a Wednesday night? We're going to light a fire, have a barbecue, and maybe do a little bit of like frisbee or something like that. Yeah. And it basically built to like 20 people. But then people would meet outside this group. So a few of them started running together, a few went fishing together. And he said, another thing that you've got to learn to do is, one of my mates loves fishing, and he said, I hate it, but actually I go fishing with him now because it's a couple of hours sitting with him chatting. It doesn't matter that I don't like fishing, but almost being too fussy about what you're doing, when really we should just start rocking up to stuff. This is all of us, not just men. We should start rocking up to opportunities to meet people. You may not get on with everybody there, but you may form, like a little splinter group, and you go off and do your own things. But I think what's kind of important is that you get out of your status quo, your norm, and your experience to other people and opinions and kind of and physical activities. And I think what he was saying, that the velvet hook is this kind of soft hook in of an activity that could link you all together and become the regular meetup. Yeah. And then from there you can establish, kind of who wants to stay involved, get involved, and who doesn't. I think it was just a really nice article to read. I do think, again, I'd almost taken it on board that you like being on your own, but I was like, and again, not that it's not healthy. I don't think you're sat here, it's weird to say it's not healthy.
Staring out the window.
Yeah. But I think, I could then see stress get to you quicker. I can see you lose your confidence, and your kind of, belief in yourself was threatened a little bit more than when you've gone out into environments where, and it could be absolutely anything. It can be like, we meet up with some friends and, like I said, just you're playing football with the kids, or, you're having a beer with a few friends of ours.
With the kids. Well, I won't tell your mum.
Yeah. But I see you transform, and because you're thinking in a different way, you're escaping the kind of usual stuff. And I just think that's really important. Finish your point.
No, it is. And I think, but also as well, for me, it comes back to that something that we've mentioned over and over again now, and it's that sense of purpose again. Like, having a sense of purpose to what you're doing at that time, be it something that's quite acute or something that's more long term. And like going back to the rugby, it was like, it wasn't just going up, rocking up to rugby training and the games. There was that social element, but for me, I took pride in being able to play rugby at a certain level, and I wanted to be fast. I wanted to be strong. I wanted to be intimidating. So as a result, my training reflected that as well. So it was like my training had a purpose.
Yeah.
And then because people, saw like the improvements that I was making, they were like, oh, what are you doing in the gym? Like rugby mates.
Yeah.
I want to do that as well. The next, we're training together as well outside of that. And it's just this little knock-on effect. And I remember when I first stopped playing rugby, like I was like, I don't know, I felt like my training lacked purpose for a while.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was like, why am I training?
Yourself,
because there's no carryover to a sport here, but it kind of feels like, I need to do something, obviously. And it took me a while to get into the groove of just training because I enjoyed training.
Yeah.
And it was like, but not having that sense of purpose. And it's the same with like, your career, your job, what you do day to day. Like, do you just want to do anything that gets money in to pay the bills? Or do you want to do something where you feel like you're genuinely having an impact on the world in a positive way, and you're doing something that you enjoy and it's building your confidence, you're climbing a career ladder, whatever it may be?
Yeah.
And do you know what? Only you can answer that question, because some people are happy living paycheck to paycheck, or just happy to get a paycheck. They don't really care what they're doing. And I know a few people like that. They're like, it's a job. I get the money. It allows me to live the life that I want to live. It's a bit shy, but it is what it is. Each to their own. That's,
But also I'd say that has affected you. You've almost had like a dual offensive from two things that have affected your health quite a lot. And again, because they would also link to how much whiskey you need to drink and how much ice cream you're eating and how little motivation you have in the gym. And it's kind of, it's that status and like you just said, like, where are you with your career right now, and how kind of financially secure are you, and how can you demonstrate that accumulation of wealth, which I think sadly is a factor in our society. So you meet up with friends, they've got a new car, they've got a new Rolex, they've just booked a new holiday, they've bought a bigger house, and so there's this constant kind of, you meet people and socialize with friends. They could be school friends, university friends, and there'll be a trigger sometimes if you're not in a good place with this stuff, if you've got financial worries, that they trigger you to feel worse about yourself. And it can affect friendships in a way, especially as one person's becoming more successful and kind of maybe like dripping in wealth. It can affect you when you but equally if you don't enjoy and love what you do, and this is where we say we've got friends that are earning really well but hate it, and they are also, we would say, like, talking to them, we both identify like, God, they sound a bit depressed right now, because they're also trapped, because they are the breadwinner for the family and they're unable to change that because of the demands, financial demands of university fees, school fees, family, and wife, whatever, or husband. And so they're trapped in a job that they don't like doing, don't feel they've got any sense of purpose or love their day to day, but they've got the wealth and things like that kind of all secure and locked in. And I think for you, you've moved between different phases of feeling like you're loving what you're doing, but there's high risk because it's running your own business. So from an entrepreneur's perspective, there's always more money to invest in cost of the business, venues, all that kind of stuff, equipment, whatever it might be. And there's also an element of instability because, it's online, and that's always kind of a bit more riskier in some ways. And then you've also got the kind of comparison with peers or friends or whatever about, how they're kind of earning a living and what they've accumulated as a result of that. And I think that affects men and women, but I think possibly just an observation is probably men slightly more because of that old fashioned, I should be the one that provides for everybody else kind of approach to it.
And of course, that's not how it should be. Because, times have certainly changed quite a lot and rightly so. And equally as well, I think a lot of the time men create that for themselves. You've never once led me to believe that you want to be a stay-at-home it's something like a housewife.
It's the pressure you're taking on yourself.
Yeah, it's you've done nothing to influence this. It's
and I would say, what if I had a fling with the gardener? Not that we have a gardener.
Yeah. What? But it is something that I've built up myself.
Yeah.
And why, how, I don't know. Maybe it's just, I don't know. Oh, men, what are we like?
No, I think it is that tradition. It's just that kind of, it is a very old fashioned societal kind of belief that men provide for the family and partners.
And don't get me wrong, my nan was an absolute grafter. She had 2 jobs. She was working right up to the end. My granddad had a job.
Your mum did.
My mum, of course, has always worked.
Your mum actually has always made sure she's financially independent. So
my
every
mum's
partner
very,
she's had, she's actually kept her own independence and not shared or not relied on anyone.
No, not at all. And I suppose you could argue that,